Hey guys, I hope you're all doing very well. And judging the title of this video, I went to the cinema and watched two movies in one day. Call me overkill, call me a survivor. I don't know how I would be able to survive two movies in the cinema in one sitting, but I was able to do it. So I'm going to react to two movies and kind of give my review and thoughts of these two movies in a single video because it will just be more easier for me to do that rather than just doing two separate videos for each movie. It would probably just take too much time and it will just give me more of a quicker reaction to it rather than just kind of dwelling too much into these two films because I could talk about a lot about them, but to be honest with you, it would just kind of just spill out really. So really, I'm just going to talk about these two movies. So the first movie I want to talk about that I watched in the cinema, and that movie is Saw X. Now, this was the 10th installment of the Saw franchise. I can't really recall how many I've watched. I've watched a lot of them. But to be really honest with you, I never really got dwelled into so much of his story apart from you had the main protagonist as John Kramer and his associates, and that's kind of really how it goes. And there's always these sort of twists that keep on happening in each of the movies. But really, with this one, I think it's pretty much exactly how the Saw formula has been used a lot in the previous movies. I don't see it being so much different to the other franchises. I gotta be really honest about that. It's pretty much exactly what it is. John's looking for a cure for his cancer, and obviously he travels to Mexico for this sort of wondrous hope that somehow these doctors would be able to treat his cancer that basically no one else has ever known in America. So basically, he travels to Mexico to get his cancer cured, and stalling upon doing so, they found out that basically it was all a scam, and he was basically conned lots of money for it. And now he's really trying to basically get revenge for it, and he's basically trying to find the people who are responsible for his hardship and trying hard to cure his cancer, who have basically scammed him lots of money. Now he's basically trying to get the people who are basically, part of this sort of scam or this ring operation to basically he captures and he gets his associates involved to basically put them into this sort of, chamber of games and traps that he basically does all round. So it's kind of exactly how the premise of the previous movies is. I don't think it does really anything different. I think for a lot of people who really appreciate the Saw formula, with the traps and everything, this one doesn't disappoint. I think a lot of them definitely does seem to have the most gore that you can really get, and I really do kind of appreciate it for this one. Although I never really would have noticed so much that there was so much of a difference personally. But I think one of the things I will say about this one, I think definitely you see most of Tobin Bell's performance as John Kramer. And I think it's really noticeable in this one compared to the previous movies. And I really think his performance was definitely the standout of this film more to the previous ones. So that's definitely one I could appreciate. But in general, I think this is a movie that is pretty much like your cake and eat it, and you're just getting used to the Saw franchise as you go along. So overall, it's a fine film. It doesn't really take any bold risks, in my opinion, and I think it's just an acceptable Saw movie for the franchise, and that's kind of really where it goes. So if I had to rate Saw X or Saw 10, I'm probably going to give it a 6 out of 10. I think it's a very fine movie. I think it's pretty much exactly what you get that's previous to the other Saw franchises. And I really think overall it's pretty good if you're really a fan of the Saw franchise or the slasher horror films in general. So yeah, overall, this movie is decent and fine for what it is. Doesn't excel in anything else more than that, and I think it's pretty good. And for the second movie that I went to the cinema and watched is The Creator. Now, I think with this one's a bit of a weird one for me. So I think overall, watching this movie, I feel like this has kind of got this sort of very similar feel to Avatar. It's not exactly like Avatar based on anything, but I really feel like its setting and its war alliances kind of, link in that sort of sense. So really with The Creator, it's basically set with the human race, and it's basically a war between the humans and artificial intelligence, the AI. And basically, they have the AI is kind of run by a lot of people within the continent of Asia that basically run and basically program these artificial intelligence, and basically part of the human race, which is run by like the U.S. military or the NORMRAD, or I think that's what they call it, are basically trying to sort of stop them from doing that. So it's basically a war alliance between the two. And basically, there's a main character who is Joshua Taylor, who basically works for the human race, and I think he is part AI as well. And he's played by John David Washington. I think he does a very good performance in this film, really trying to, you know, build his sort of charisma and trying to sort of, deliver a lot of, good dialogue between characters as well. One of the main sort of characters that is kind of present that he's trying to sort of find in this movie, which is kind of centered on this plot, is finding someone called Maya, who is basically Joshua's love interest. And they basically get, in basically different situations that come along with this film, basically with a young child who is also an AI as well. And the young child has more programmed abilities as well to sort of, change with technology and everything like that. It's pretty interesting. And I think really with the creator, it's got a really sort of nice setting. It's got basically a lot of decent action. But unfortunately, it doesn't. Wouldn't say it has moments, and I think at times watching this movie's story, its plot doesn't really sort of make much sense. I think they had a lot of ambition to create a great setting for this movie, but it didn't make sense. So it was like, who do I understand who the enemies are? Is it the humans that are basically trying to stop this AI who are the threat to humanity? Are the AI really the good people that want to stop the humans? And Joshua kind of sits between these two for quite a lot, and there really is no balance to it. And I don't want to kind of get into the whole thing of the movie because it will kind of spoil it out, but I think at times the story and the plot has a lot of inconsistencies personally. I also think that they didn't have a lot of moments for action as well. I mean, you do get into some sort of like war scenes that are kind of similar to Avatar, and I think that's kind of the problem. You kind of forget them really. You don't remember them for what it is, apart from like you remember it for its great visuals and great settings. Now, I don't want to discredit it for that. I actually think a lot of it does is pretty good for what it is, and I really think it's a good taste for a new type of movie as well. Although for some maybe it's not so much of a different experience, but I kind of sit into this sort of balance between the two really. I think there's a lot of emphasis on some good dialogue. I wish the writing between the characters would improve to understand the story a little bit more to kind of bridge some sort of consistency with it. And I think the settings and the whole sort of theme of this film was actually pretty impressive. So I think it's a good movie, but I think it kind of sat a little bit lackluster with trying to sort of explain the whole story between the movie and its characters a bit more. So overall, if I had to rate the creator, I'm going to give it a 7 out of 10. I think it's good, but unfortunately, for some of the things that it does pretty good at, it's also very inconsistent with its story and the way it develops characters within this, the sequencing of the film. But it's a good film overall. I wouldn't really rush people to go recommend watching it immediately. But if you're kind of a fan of good visual settings and scenes, something similar to what Avatar was, I think The Creator would be a good movie to watch. So those are the two movies I watched in the cinema. I think it was better than some of the other movies I may have seen previously that Hollywood have come out with. But overall, I was able to survive two movies at once, which is a real skill nowadays in 2023. And yeah, that's about it, guys. See you later.